Wondering if your device supports the Mixed Reality Toolkit? Well, I have great news. The Mixed Reality Toolkit has cross-platform support. So what that means is that you're pretty flexible with regards to which device you could actually use. Now, beyond the HoloLens and the HoloLens 2, you can deploy projects that make use of the Mixed Reality Toolkit to a variety of devices, which include the HTC Vive, Oculus Rift, Oculus Quest, Android and iOS devices, as well as the Leap Motion by Ultraleap.
Good morning. My name is James Ashley. I'm the moderator for today, coming to you from Atlanta, Georgia, where it's 8 a.m. And I'm pleased to introduce you to Rajesh Chakravarti, who's coming to you from Singapore, where it's 9 p.m. tonight. Rajesh is currently leading projects building meaningful solutions across industries such as retail, social media platforms, and edtech from Singapore. He's the academic director at Mages in Singapore, and he's also an AR and VR expert and developer at Mages Studio. Without further ado, Rajesh.
My apologies. Okay, got it. Thanks. I think, sorry again, great. Again, my apologies if I forgot to unmute myself. Okay, so again, good evening, and from Singapore, I'm Rajesh. You can call me Raj as well. Today's topic is more on experience augmented reality. I'm just focusing on app and web-based. As much we are targeting towards social AR as well. Because of time limitations, I'm just focusing on app and web-based. Yeah. Okay, about myself, I'd say born and brought up in India, grew up in US, settling down in Singapore. So think about the globe trotter, okay. But I'm more of a fascinated towards the technology side of it, more towards edtech, okay. I'm a learning futuristic. That means I always look at the fascinating technology that comes across that's upcoming as well. Right now, as much I'm into the AR VR field, I'm also getting into NFTs and blockchain and how games can be integrated into the blockchain field. That's my next set of research that I have right now. Okay, been in this field for the last 18 to 20 years. Moving across from games, animation, VFX, right now into AR and VR. Okay. Without further ado, what I have lined up is, I'll call it as a plot. We get into AR. It's not that I want to get into the definition of what AR is, just for everyone, because when we started this journey on AR, VR, and one of the learnings that we had is you get all kinds of audience, and we always want to make sure that everybody understands this kind of technology very well. So it's good for us to educate people who are new to this space, and at the same time, we also want to put together some case studies so that what else can be done with this technology, because this is evolving. This is a very interesting way of how it can get into all different industries. Okay. So we get into app-based. We see some sample examples. We do some web-based AR. What's web-based AR? Something that's people are fascinated about. What are the features? Some case studies. And if time permits, I'll get into the social side, and we'll define the difference between, if I want to embark on this journey on AR, so what we should be looking at for app, web, or social AR. Okay. So right now, what we want to get into the definition is, so what is AR? Okay, now put in a layman terms, and everybody will point to the right direction, is it's like a Pokemon Go kind of thing. But if I want to put a technical definition to it, you're actually uh, putting virtual objects in a real world. Very layman definitions. Okay, and what kind of information that you want to put across? It can be any information. Okay, so in a nutshell, you're putting virtual objects in real world. And what kind of hardware can you use? Smartphones that we have, and people are getting some glasses, upcoming technologies, and also some hardware devices that encourage AR into this one. Saying that, we can define this AR into three technical terms, put it in a layman perspective. When I said virtual objects, right, what you can overlay information into a real world. What kind of information? So the first element is what information you want to lay out in the real world. Text. It can be dynamic text, it can be static text, it can be a 3D model, it can be some kind of a graphic, you can name it. The second is, how do you want to augment the text? That's important, right? That means when you do Pokemon Go, you go to a particular location, you get some characters up in the life. That means they know that at this location things pop up. So there is a mechanism to track what location you are in. Or sometimes you can look at a particular page and augment that particular information. That's trackers. The last is the medium. Okay, well, whether I'm going to use what medium to augment this information, whether it's going to be a phone, whether it's going to be different hardware devices, it's completely up to you. Okay, saying that, there are different ways, types of AR people talk about, and a simple example is marker-based AR, meaning you look at a specific marker and you can augment that information. Okay, static image, I will say. Okay, people used to have QR codes. And then we moved from QR codes to images, and right now still people use QR codes, but still it's a static image, and you decide what do you want to augment in using that static image. Okay. Um, I move on to another type of AR. It's markerless AR. That means what Pokemon Go is a markerless AR. That means we are actually augmenting the same information, but you don't need any images. You don't need any trackers. It can augment on a non-reflective surface or on a specific location. Typical markerless AR. Okay, as long as you have AR compatible phones, then markerless AR should work. And then markerless AR also can also integrate the location. That means you can tell, okay, at this location, I'm going to augment that particular character or some information you want, including GPS coordinates. So that is the typical size of how markerless AR works. Saying that, I'm just quickly running through the foundation before we get into some case studies. The important part of AR is we define what AR is, we define the different types of AR, then we ask ourselves, where do you want to deploy it? It's very important that deployment is an important part of how a solution works. Okay, app-based means I'm deploying on my phones. Web-based means you're deploying on a browser. Okay, social AR means you're using social media platforms to deploy. These are the three ways people are augmenting information. Yes, we have other hardware devices, but when I put it in a nutshell, where does the mass market lie is these three categories: app, web, and social AR. Okay, these are the three categories in which AR gets um, uh, uh, deployed. Okay, uh, before we get into this, as we are starting about AR and AR kind of thing, there is one important thing that I have to come into the picture. Okay, because people talk about AR and say this is web, this is social, and this is app based. Okay, but as I start defining thing, there is one important element in any AR that you take is the camera, and something people don't talk about it. Okay, and because I used to have a Nokia phone, and then it got moved into a kind of a smarter phone. Then now, if you see the phones that you have, the phones are much more powerful. Look at some of the iPhones that is coming up, iPhone 13 and iPad HD and all those things. Okay, there's one guy that's making noise, but not the level of AR. When you come to the AR, this guy is very important, and that's why we call it as why camera matters. And why it is very important, because if I put a simple definition of what camera is, it's a device for recording visual information. It's a typical Wikipedia definition. Okay, but what happens when you give these kind of elements to the camera? When you get, it gets more powerful. For example, When I tag an AI to the camera, or when I tag this AR to the camera, or when I put a computer vision to the camera, that means your camera is one of the biggest visualizing tool that is getting more powerful when using through this technologies of AI, through the technology of AR. What is computer vision to? Very simple. Think about that. I walk in one of the technological airport. It recognizes my face. Okay, it's a camera. Okay, I can augment, take a Facebook filter. I look at my face and do some typical tracking. I can put some mask and all those things. It tracks my face. Camera. So why does camera understands the location when I do marker based marker? So that's why the camera becomes much more powerful in this AR solution. As the camera getting more advanced, it is giving multiple ways of how things can solutions. And that's why camera can do three things. So it can communicate a message that you want to do. Okay, it can entertain people when you, and it can also do commerce. And why I talk about this is because when you do AR, you keep your camera in mind. And when we do solutions, you're not doing solutions for you, your family members, like you're doing solutions for the public around you. It's a mass market. So when you do hit a mass market, you have a range of people using different kinds of cameras, different kinds of phones. So how does your solution reach those wider audience? What platform do you use? And that is what I thought this talk should be all about. Okay, as much we are fascinated with high-end devices kind of a thing, end of the day there is this mass market movement. How do I reach those wider audience? And for that, camera plays a bigger part. Communicate, entertainment and commerce. And that's why camera has transitioned from a hardware to a software. Very important part of this one. Okay, always we thought like, what's the camera as a hardware, we take a picture and that's pretty, we transfer the files. But first time we actually see that it acts like a software. And when you start building this emerging technologies like AI, AR and CV into this one, it becomes much more powerful. Okay, uh, saying that, and I conclude this theoretical part before I start the case study, is camera is becoming the next canvas. And why I say canvas is because AR is nothing but what? You're putting information. Where can you put information? Around you. That means around the world around you. That means anything around you is the space. And you can put any information around it. Think the space around you is your canvas. And that is why we always call, at least from our side, we call it as the next canvas is the camera becomes the next canvas. You look around, you can augment certain things. You can get information around where you look around. Okay, and it becomes the next canvas in the spatial storytelling. Okay, content is around us, and what you can recognize an object using a camera, you can augment an object using a camera, you can display an information around your camera anywhere around it. And that's why it's the camera becomes the next canvas in this spatial storytelling now. Saying that, we always ask ourselves, okay, uh, we defined AR, we define the importance of what camera is all about. Then we ask this question. It's a tool and an engagement. AR is a tool, very simple, okay? But when I decide making a solution, everyone, I can tell you around the world, everybody make AR solutions. The challenge is, how do you make sure that the customer uses that particular solution? And that's where the whole part is, the engagement part of it. Augmented reality is something a person must choose to engage. You can put a big poster, you can put a QR code, you can scan, and the guy can walk right past it. He doesn't want to even scan it. The question is, what is the intention for me to go and scan? I put it in a very busiest mall in Singapore. The question is, out of 10,000 people visiting the mall, how many people will read the poster, scan the QR code, and engage with the solution that you have done? So the question comes is the engagement part of it. So it's still not a mass marketing tool. It's a tool that everybody thinks that it will become mass market, but it is on the right direction. But we have to have a, a better strategy to educate and tell people that please do this. The solution will be awesome. So you have to educate that part of it. It's more of attention grabbing and educate them about that. Oh, I'm going to buy a furniture. Try this app. You will know how the furniture looks before you get it. That education is very important. So half the people miss that point of educating normal people that who don't understand what AR is and how can I use that solution for these kind of things. Okay, and I just want to put some simple case studies across. Again, we have wide range, but I just want to make sure that we are, because of time limitations, I'm just pushing across something that's easier ones now. This was very easy and very interesting from our perspective. It's not mind blowing, but it is a simple perspective from the sales perspective. Okay, we have printers, and what happened during printers is like the salesperson used to carry those big printers throughout wherever he goes to go. And we ask ourselves like why and the COVID hit, and we asked ourselves is like how can AR help people sell the printers, because you can't keep carrying these big printers in a lorry and park and then do all this kind of stuff. So we thought about a solution in which can we do simple like a marker based AR where you are marketing a printer and you can tell the functionalities of the printer and we can see how this whole process work. Okay, I'm going to reduce my sound and I will talk about it. So basically, when the app opens up, you can enter your username, you can enter your password, and you can enter your zip code where you want to try to go. And that way, you can track the data of, okay, this demo has been shown by this people at this location. This is the salesperson that you're trying to do. And then when the page opens up, again, it's a simple page. It's not kind of very fascinating kind of a thing. But one thing that we have done is we're able to 3D scan the whole printer and bring the printer inside the space. It's a simple 3D thing. But one thing that you can always see in this is there's something called showcase and live scale. Showcase is showcasing, oh, this is the nice 3D printer. These are the features part of it. Live scale is when you can actually have a marker turned up and say, okay, I'm going to print a A3 size marker or a A4 size marker, or you can define your size. And when you tap in the size, the whole printer pops up. And the advantage of this kind of thing is when you put the printer pops up, on the right side, you will have the functionalities. That means you are pitching to a client, boss, this is the nice printer. Can I have this functionality? What you can do? Instead of having a brochure telling the story, can this app be engaging for the client? That is the whole purpose of this kind of project. That means we don't want to do AR for the sake of AR. We do AR because it adds value to your marketing tool. We add value to your sales tool. And that is the reason why we wanted AR to be additional to the salesperson, not like replacing that particular part of it. So it's a very interesting way of how AR can be used. And I always tell people, okay, don't do for the sake of AR because it's cool, it's fine. But apart from it, does it bring value to your business? Keeping that, I can also get into something that we always do. Okay, we always wanted to do something beyond, and we always want to showcase that AR is not meant only for one specific industry. It can go into different industries as well. And that's why we went into fashion tech and we said like, okay, it's COVID times. I'm designing something and a guy sits in New York and he wants to approve kind of a thing. Yes, you can send the design across. Okay, will it not be fascinating to see, can we have the designs come up as part of AR? That's one. Second is, and people cannot do fashion shows. Can we do a quick fashion show inside the small AR solution itself? Okay, and I can walk you through as I hit across. I'm going to mute it as well. So basically, and everyone, again, the whole gist of this is basically we can, let's go to the print one. Okay, so think about it's a digital portfolio that you have. You have a nice fabric, you have a nice write-up about the design, and we can flip through the magazines across. Okay, it can be an ebook, it can be a hard copy, it's completely up to you. You can have a QR code, you can have your own marker based as well. A very simple normal magazine. Okay, but what we have incorporated is we have incorporated those AR elements as part of the book itself, so that it's part of the storyline, so that it gets tagged along to it. Okay, so we play this music. So that's the
I really like it. Kept light and forced fight. People's pleasure. Nights, nights, as to bring us data flavors.
So as we see the book, you can create your own like a small box kind of a thing, and you can also augment the fabrics. That's much more detailed. Whatever design you did it in software like Flow 3D, and how do you bring it into an AR, and you can create your own ramp walk. And that's something that we thought like it'll be pretty cool to say that okay, fashion is always all about getting things very interesting way, and we can always bring things up in perspective in such that we can not only have interesting way of telling stories but also showcasing the product law. So in a way we can think like it's a fashion tech, I will say. And that's the next definition of where we thought will be interesting to go. Okay. So we saw one on the marketing sales side. We saw one on the fashion tech, and we also want to get into the next level of where we talked about cameras and why we want. And I am fascinated by cameras and because of photography interest law. But as we start understanding cameras, and one of the things that it's kind of interesting to see is like the concept of spatial AI. Okay, and basically can we always know what is marker based. You see image, you can augment something, and markerless is you can augment on any information. But what about space? Can your camera identify a space? That means you walk inside a museum, and you understand every country in the world is going through this COVID times. And I'm assuming that a good example I'll tell you is like if I walk into a museum, you will have those people in distance. I'll say, boss, watch this, go there, go there. That's it. They'll not come near you. Or you have a new employee coming into your let's say we have front institutions. Okay, so we become a new student comes to my campus, and how do you do a orientation about okay, this is my classroom, this is my library kind of a thing. So how does it work across? Okay, so can camera be recognize the space and start augmenting? So no marker, no markerless, can space be the augmentation side of it? That's when we're able to understand how to track and augment areas and spaces. Okay, as said before, lidar scanner from iPhone, ipad, the new iPhones and iPads have it. We are able to scan the space, and we are able to come up with some interesting solutions now that we talk about when I say scanning. In case if you're very new to this whole space, what I'm trying to do is this is one of our campuses, and I'll say I want to scan the space, meaning you take your the new iPhones or the iPads and try to look around the space. It tries to scan again. Using you have to have that specific software to go scan, and what is happening right now, it scans the surface for you. And when you scan the surface, it's started to recognize the space around you. Okay, again, the bigger the space, the bigger the computation time, but at least the camera is able to recognize the space. And once the scan gets completed, it gets recorded and it gets converted to a 3D space. Okay, for the whole application to recognize. So what we did after that is we kind of scanned, and now once we bring inside, we create a solution. Say, okay, if a person walks inside the space with their phone, iPad or Android or iOS kind of a thing, and we can start augmenting this. That means I don't need anyone to tell me what this room is, what the space is, what this artwork is all about. So we can directly implement this inside that space. So we can come across and say, okay, now here it is. We have welcome, we can have audio, we can have even have some music also. And as you start walking, this phone is recognizing this is not an After Effects. This is a simple AR application in which you start walking around the space. Anybody can walk with that app installed, and you can start augmenting this information. This one classroom one, this is classroom two, and then you start walking across. Then you come into a very interesting picture of, oh, I have another classroom 3 there, I have another classroom 4, and what is inside the classroom 3, you can put some information across. So these are things that makes it much more interesting lah. So that's a quick way of how space can be identified and we can augment some information using that space. Okay, that's the important part of I call it as a navigation assistant. We call it as navigation assistant. And we took it to the next stage and say, okay, classrooms are small, makes sense, but how about doing it in malls? Okay, and then that assuming that there are very big malls in Singapore, and we always ask like, okay, how do I go from one place to another? Then we got fascinated by saying that, okay, I go inside that space, okay, and if it's Christmas time, can I put some presents along the way, so that it's gamification, right? Celebrate Christmas, and you can collect some gift boxes and then go to the concierge and give it, and you can get some rewards. But the whole idea for us is, okay, I want to go to Subway, or I want to go to a Pizza Hut kind of a thing. You click and you can navigate to you as an indoor navigation scene and say click, and it gives you the experience. Because the very big malls, okay, I'm at level 1, I want to level 5 at that particular thing. How do I guide a particular tourist? And that's what the whole idea of spatial AR is all about. So you can gamify it by not only giving it as a location navigation assistant, give it an interesting twist by collecting gifts and stuff like that now. So that's another thing, and we can now kind of integrate it in such a way that, it looks lonely without a human presence. So we thought like, can we add an avatar to it? So you can choose an avatar and let the avatar guide you across the place, so that it is not only typical Google Maps or typical maps where it tell you the voice and stuff like that. So can we have a map, or can we have a character? The character can actually make you guide where the place is all about. So that's an interesting way of how spatial AR can be done into this one. So that's a quick way of how AR is getting direct. Again, there are complex ones done, but I'm just putting on a perspective of retail, and a simple person can understand. Okay. And as we are pushing across this concept of web AR, and why app and web, till now it's app, means you're installing a solution on the phone. That means if a customer wants to use it, his app has to be installed on this one. Okay. And quick on the web AR, very simple. You don't need to install anything. Your solution resides on the web. It's a very, very simple definition. Magic of AR on your smartphone's web browser. Simple as it is. Okay, I buy a IKEA, I buy a shoe, I buy a chair. I can browse what it is all about. I can augment the stuff. But where things get interesting is, you don't have to download an app store. Everything resides on the space itself. And why it is important? Because assuming things are going better in another 2-3 months, and I don't know how this new variant comes up, assuming the events industry opens up and there's a conference happening, you don't want a attendee to download an app. Okay, all they want to do is they scan an app, it opens in a browser, and things should start beyond that. So the web AR has got multiple things that you don't need an app downloads, and it is much more accessible than a download if you ask a person to download. And that's where the journey starts. When you take consumer journey, you scan a QR code, and the whole journey starts from there. That means you can create a marketing material. Let's say buy this nice sofa or a dining table or anything that has put a QR code, and the whole journey starts across this. You scan the QR code, and it goes to the URL, and then your website information, things push across from that particular thing. Okay, so when we start talking about web AR, an important part, I think the heavily that's right now getting used is on the retail side. IKEA is one good example, but other companies have started to use it. Okay, and why I talk about customers for a few things. Okay, because of the COVID, the retail, the online has shoot up. Before itself, online has shoot up, but because of COVID, a lot of people are going online. That means they do a lot of research, and they ask people, what is this, or let's say I buy a furniture, is this furniture good, or is this buying a fridge, is this fridge good, with this brand is good, all the things. Okay, when you take an iceberg, okay, the bottom part of the iceberg is what the research is. Majority of the decision making, they will put the review up and down. They will see how everything gets done before you go to the store, and that's the important part of this. Okay, that's why when you split the iceberg, the upper iceberg and the bottom part of the iceberg, the bottom part is where a lot of research has been done by the customer, that yes, this is what I want to do. The reviews, ask your friends, read online how the things are happening and all the things. Okay, and why I'm talking about this is because when you make a decision, and that means customer is making a decision before he enters the store. That means, can AR add a value to the decision making? And that's why the picture is all about. Okay, if you can add a value to the decision making of the customer, then it makes it interesting. So what makes web AR? A lot of things. Um, Obviously, you need a 3D model because it's not going to be a photograph. Obviously, it's going to be a web 3D, meaning if you don't want to augment, at least you can see how the object looks from all directions. And the last is AR itself. Okay, so these are the two fundamental things of what makes us the web AR. Okay, I believe a lot of people have seen something like this. What makes web AR as web 3D kind of a thing is basically a 3D object, 3D model. You can orbit around, you can change some colors, you can add stretch, you can adjust the dimensions of it. That's a typical configurator, I will say. A lot of configurators have come across in the recent days, and this is one of the simplest configurators that people do. And as we start understanding the configurators, you can also personalize it. Oh, I need this chair, I need this. You're customizing for the taste that you're giving, and that is what the customer wants, and that is what the brand wants to give it across also. Okay, and then you can check this whether this item is available or not. And as we understand this, the newest thing that add on to it, okay, that means we started with two-dimensional web pages, then we started with configurators. You can adjust color and all those things. Now a new kind of thing that gets added is, oh, I have a small AR element that gets embedded in the space, and that's what makes it interesting. That means if I see this AR, you're able not only to augment certain things, but you're able to rotate, scale, and try to fit inside a space around you. And that's what the whole experience is all about. Okay, if you've not seen it, just go to one of the websites where they use AR, IKEA, or any other websites, and you can look for this kind of symbol, or they'll type of word AR. That means all the pages will be like a normal website, but there is a small circle that says AR, or like a symbol, like this thing means it's an AR symbol. That means when you tap on it, it opens up and actually augment that particular product from the browser onto your real world. And that's what this web AR is all about. um, uh, Saying that, let me give an example. Assuming I want to buy a bicycle, okay, that's the best way to put it across. The bicycle is a simple one, okay, but understand, some people are fascinated about what kind of bicycles they want to do, what kind of parts, what is the gear, and I want the handbag to be like this. So you can always customize it to the way you want it, okay, and you can orbit around to see how does it look, but it resides on a browser, okay, and to see how does it look like. Okay, I'm just going to, and you can configure it with color of your choice. Okay, once you're happy, then you tap onto it, and it goes to, okay, let me augment this one. It augments on my real world. Once you tap the small icon, that's AR icon, now what you're trying to see is it augments it on the real world. Then all we are trying to do is we augment it, we can scale it, we can rotate it to see how the whole purpose looks like. And so why it is fascinating, because anybody who doesn't want to download an app, everything gets reside on a browser base itself, and that makes it much more interesting now. So that's a way of how you can make a decision whether you are trying to buy this product or not. And that's the whole idea behind it. Okay, and as we are understanding the concept of web AR, take a furniture and stuff like that. Okay, and we do, as we I introduced myself. Okay, we do production, we do a lot of training as well. Okay, we when you go into a web developer kind of thing, JavaScript, HTML, and all those things, people use a lot of WordPress and Shopify and all those kind of a thing. So the other value that brings across is AR is not limited to that you have to make your own custom code to make it more difficult for people not. So one advantage with this AR is AR can be integrated into your normal WordPress website also. Because I started the journey because I always believe in mass market. Can anyone enter the space? Yes, you don't need a very high-end skill set. For example, if I want to use a WordPress website, I've created my website, I put Elementor and all those things, I've created up a nice product page and all those things. But can AR be integrated into this simplest WordPress website? Yes, and that is the whole idea behind it. Okay, so and the whole process will remain the same, except you're doing, instead of doing it on a custom HTML website page starting from scratch, you can always integrate it. WordPress, WooCommerce, add in the plugins into it, and visualize from website. And that's a simple way of how doing it. As we start developing more SDKs or plugins for this kind of page, the stability becomes much more easier. A good example I want to show is painting. I know a lot of people are fascinated about paintings, where we take the painting, we hang on the walls, okay? But sometimes they have to bring the painting to the home. They have to see how does it look like. What's the alternative kind of a thing? So I'm buying different kinds of very high value painting. Can I see how the painting looks on my wall before I buy it? Yes, and that too using the WordPress kind of a thing, because a lot of people buy frames, and this is one way of understanding how this works. So I'm just going to play it across. Mute my thing. So what all we do is we go to the website. You see the typical dimension. We see the information about it. We see a 3D model of that particular website. Very interesting way of how things laid out. We actually have the price. You can put an offer across, and once you have this, you see a small icon. That's an AR icon. You augment it. The best part of this augmentation is it can do vertical augmentation. Always people thought about horizontal and AR. This is vertical augmentation, in which you can augment your AR on a wall, and then you can scale it, rotate it, and see, oh, wow, I think this painting looks good for me. That's the whole idea behind it. Now, that means before you purchase make a decision on this, you can choose the different kinds of painting that you want, and you can click and you can augment it, so that your decision making will be much more faster. And again, that's the whole gist of painting class. So there's another example, so where you can scale and you can put across. Can you put 2 or 3? You can always put 2 or 3. So absolutely fine with that one. So this is I'll say more on the web AR side. Okay. And as we are seeing some examples, again we can see more examples, but I think because of time, I'll come to the last section of it. What makes the decision whether AR is, assuming AR for a mass market, okay? 3 ways we can target. It's web-based, it's app-based, whether it's social-based. So when I say social, means using social media platforms like Facebook, Instagram, or Snapchat, or TikTok, or whatever you name it, okay? So what seals the deal? What if I am a business person? What should I look for? Because AR is coming into all these 3 platforms, okay, and I can deploy it in all 3. But what makes the decision is 2 things. Do you want the customer to download or not to download? It's a very basic decision a business person can make or a client can make. And then you can say, boss, you want to download or not download. And with app, you have to download any kind of solutions. If you think your customer will download it, then say yes. So app, you have to download the solution. For web and social, you don't have to download anything. It resides on the web. That's pretty much it. And for social AR, it resides on a Facebook, or a social media platforms. The second thing is customization, because not all solutions are very straightforward. You drag and drop, you put it inside, and things work. It will take some level of customization. App and web are giving high level of customization. That means I can bring in a third party right inside the space. With regards to social AR, it's very low, because it's restricted by a couple of social media platforms like Facebook, Instagram. They have restriction on what can be integrated inside it. And with regards to TikTok or Snapchat, again, they do customization, but not at the level of app and web AR. The last is the file size limit. It's very important, because you don't want your customer who's using the experience, boss, please download this. There's only 100 MB file. Nobody will download. So the question comes is, and that's why there are also limitations on app and web. As much there are no limitations, that means I can put a 1 GB file now, so it will actually pull down the experience. So the basic thing is app and web has no limitations, but at the same time, as developers and business people, we should be very careful on the limitations of how much the solution customer should download. Because when you put a 200 MB file on a web, it's going to take its sweet time to download, because still a browser, assuming we get 5G, and it will be much more faster, but keeping the limitations, there are limitations on how much file a browser can adapt. The last is for social AR. Absolutely, they have 100% limitations, 4 MB to 8 MB, 10 MB max you can go. Beyond that, we can't. Not GB, it's only 4 MB to 8 MB. The last and this on the section is internet required. Do we really need an internet for app? Only once. That means once you download, you don't have to worry about anything. You can just feel free to enjoy. That's how games are. That means you go to an app store, you download the game, and done with it. But for web and AR, you have to make sure that you're connected at all times. If not, the solution doesn't work. So why we talk about this is because these are considerations that any person should make. As much we talk about cameras, as much we talk about the different kinds of solutions that we can create for different businesses, industries at this point of COVID times, the decision will be like, when we make a decision, these are points that we have to ask ourselves. You want to make an app downloadable, not downloadable? How do you reach the audience? A lot of things needs to be taken care of. Okay, how big is the solution going to be, and how engaging your audience needs to be for the solution. So these are like I'll say a quick roadmap of, as you don't have to be a technical person. It's a very layman definition of decision making process. Let's say when I speak to a developer, ask yourself, okay, what makes the easier way out? App, web, app, or a social AI kind of a thing. And this page is all about, okay, from downloadable to accuracy to content. And content is very key, because you want the furniture to look like a furniture. You don't want to look like the furniture to be like a um, like a game-based model, or does it remain game-based model and realistic kind of a thing. So and the rest app thing I've talked about. So and customization, file size limitations, internet required, all things are needs to be taken into consideration when you start developing AR applications. Okay, saying that, what makes the deal? Very simple. Okay, whatever solution you make, okay, you go to put in a Play Store, you put on a website, you put on a social media platform. How do you promote your experience? How do you communicate your experience? That seals the deal. Okay, because when you put on an app store, there are 10,000 apps, a million apps in the app store. People don't know what AR they have to download. You put on a social AR platform like a Facebook or Instagram, you know how many people access. How do you know which AR is yours? The same thing with the web. How does people know that your solution exists? The important part of all this AR is, how do you communicate your experience? I can understand for the training part of it. If you're coming from an industry, say that, boss, this is for my company, my employees. Very simple. You tell, they will do it. But when you expand beyond training to a mass market and say consumer driven, then you really have to be very careful on, when you create solutions, you should also have a parallel thing come into the picture is, when I create a solution, how do I communicate this experience across? And that's why communicating experience seals the deal for AR. So everyone is creating AR experiences. The question is, how are you communicating it? And it's a fascinating journey for everyone who are in this field with regards to AR law. And how we promote with each other. Okay. Saying that, I will wrap this up for now. Thank you again, James, and thank you again for the extra conference for giving me an opportunity to talk. And if you have any questions, I'll take it across. Thanks.
Hey, Rajesh, that was an absolutely fascinating talk. I really appreciate that. I know we've got some questions lined up already.
Okay.
Okay.
Can I stop sharing, or should I keep it open?
Keep it open. You're fine.
Okay, fine. Okay.
Okay. Okay. First one. As a recent computer science graduate, how would I get into web AR development?
The initial thing that you always need is, I think the basis is, if you have done web development. Computer science is a broader term. In case if you have touched on front end, HTML, JavaScript, that is your first way to push forward, because that's where the framework is. Okay. And that's where I will start my journey across. If you have not done HTML or JavaScript, it'll be very difficult for you to get into web AR. So that's my start. Okay. And second, there are now web solutions, like for now some game engines like Unity and Play Canvas have web solutions. That means you create your AR experiences and you can deploy on the web. But for anything you want to deploy on the web, You start with HTML, JavaScript, and then you can rely on any game engines or any other software to get solutions. Okay, but one software that I will look in case if you're getting into this eighth wall is one of the kind of an interesting game, not a game engine, I'll say. It's a web AR solution provider. It's slightly expensive though, but I think they do a very interesting way of how to create solutions.
Interesting.
Mm.
Here's another question from a senior manager at an XR studio.
Mm.
He wants to know, in the struggle for the future, sounds big, between web AR and expensive hardware devices, how do you think that will play out?
I think web AR is catching up, but there is a limitation on the technology of what you can do with web, and that's something that we have to keep in statement that web has its limitations. And again, it goes back to the solution. What is the solution, and and whether web can achieve that solution or not. Okay, and with regards to the expensive hardware, yes. When I say expensive hardware, it goes back to, if my understanding is right, it is, if it's going to be talking about HoloLens and Magic Leap, yes, it's expensive. It's not for a mass market, but can I create the same kind of experiences using my phones, or like think about Oculus kind of a thing? You can. There are ways to work around it. It's a question of what the kind of team that we are having it. But my question is, it all goes back to what is the solution that we want to build, and whether web AR can help you on that one or not.
Mm-hmm. And then, okay, so in the future of AR, which industry do you think will really drive AR adoption?
I think that right now the industry that's getting more traction is, personally, at least in this side of the world, is education, training, and the third that getting traction is on the social media side of it. These are the things that we see a lot of traction. Education, training as a whole, anywhere you can take across from corporates to things, a lot of training is happening inside the space. And why I talk about education is because of ed tech is one of the space. Okay, assuming I have a 3D model of a brain, can you augment it make it much more interactable for students, kind of a thing. And what makes it interesting is, can the AR solution be integrated into their current learning management system? Because everybody has their own LMSs where they put the notes, slides, and all those things. Can we create a solution so that it gets into the pipeline of their system? The second thing that actually we're working with some of the teachers is, can we empower our teachers to make their own AR simple solutions? Okay, I want to make an art. I don't want them to go learn programming, because teachers have got a lot of things already on their plate. The question is there a platform where we can develop in which teachers can be empowered by, okay, you can drag and drop this, your AR solution is ready. I think we have already reached 50-60% of it, because I personally know there are a couple of tools that is available that empowers teachers much more faster than the typical programming approach. And that's where I will say the industries are going across. EdTech, I'll say, the education, training for second, for sure, and retail to some extent, but the last is social AR. So I can say that because of filters and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. And let's see. Okay. As somebody who's in this field, how much time a week do you actually spend in AR or VR?
It depends on what I get into this. So I think it's I would say AR I've spent, if I take last year, I'll definitely say I spend more time on the AR than VR, for two reasons. Because AR, I just need a smartphone. Okay, I don't need any other device that is needed to create solutions. But for VR, I pretty much I need to set my desk, and I have to put my things across and say, it's device dependent a lot. I would say AR is more from the last 1 year.
Fantastic. And then for people who want to try to get in touch with you, what's the best way to get in touch with you these
My
days on
link,
social media? LinkedIn?
LinkedIn is the best. That's why I put my LinkedIn across, and LinkedIn is the best option, and we can always take it from there.
Okay, so for people watch this on YouTube, just rewind the video to that QR code that Rajesh showed earlier, and you can find him. Thank you so much, Rajesh, for a fantastic talk.
Thank you. Thank you.